So there are these stories going around about The Apprentice, and that Donald Trump said a bunch of stuff on The Apprentice during some of the outtakes, or before they were actually shooting it, that would be embarrassing, as embarrassing, less embarrassing, something like that, as Access Hollywood.
Some people feel more embarrassing, depending on your I guess your perspective on certain words.
So here's what we know, and here's what we're hearing. What we know is this, that there are people that want to put pressure on Mark Burnett to release the audio, since Mark Burnett is the creator of The Apprentice. He's famed producer in Hollywood,
Apprentice,
and
Survivor,
and a lot of shows.
Shark Tank, all
that. And Bible. Anyway, Mark Burnett, we know, does not own the show. He doesn't own the footage. MGM owns the footage. And what we're told is there are all sorts of legal entanglements where people sign these confidentiality agreements, and there are so many, legal requirements in terms of when anything gets released that they will absolutely, they can't release it. The only way it could be released is if it's somehow leaked.
If someone leaks it.
And which is always possible, of course.
But if that person leaks it, they are now on notice that
if they find out who that person is.
Right.
And that's the same thing that happened with Access Hollywood.
Right.
And I'll give you guys both sides of it. There is a producer named Bill Pruitt who tweeted, I assure you, when it comes to the Trump tapes, there are far worse. And he hashtagged, this is just the beginning. So on one hand, you have a guy who worked on the first 2 seasons of The Apprentice saying, there are horrible things, worse than what you heard on the audio from Access Hollywood. So that's one thing. The second report that's out, and this is the worst case scenario for Donald Trump, is that somewhere along the line he said the N-word, which I will give my opinion. To me, I don't see how that's possible, that if at all, even without a microphone on, Donald Trump says something like that, that somebody in that room complains, or if not complaining because of their jobs, that leaks out to the press. There's no way, to me, 10 years ago, Donald Trump says something like that and it doesn't get out. I do think there's probably some tapes with The Apprentice that have some things on them similar.
That are probably similar to
Access Hollywood, the one you guys have all heard. But if it's way over the top, like something that racist, I just don't see that staying in the office of The Apprentice producers for this long.
Yeah, I mean, because remember, I mean, we're talking 2006 is 10 years ago. That word was not acceptable.
Not
just
acceptable.
As bad then. Yeah,
just as bad then. And in fact, we were talking about it, and I said, I think that 10 years ago, maybe it was it's more acceptable now, just because of its prevalence in rap than it would be 10 years ago. Look, we cover a lot of these shows. We cover a lot of shows in entertainment, period. And you hear about things when something out of character like that happens. People talk in this town, and they absolutely talk. And it just seems. I agree with you, Mike. It's weird that if Donald Trump had used that word, somebody would be talking about it.
You would think.
I agree, and I can even give you an example.
The other
of that.
stuff about and this cuts. Look, I think if Donald Trump had said the tapes that this guy is purporting are out there of Donald Trump, if it's similar to the things that we heard on the Access Hollywood tape, maybe people don't talk about that because they were just used to hearing that sort of thing, and so it's not out of character.
Right,
you know what I mean? They think it's, oh, that's just Donald being Donald, and so people don't say anything. But the N-word, yeah, somebody would have said something.
I wanted to say that's exactly what I was told. I spoke to somebody who worked with him for 10 years, who's a female, by the way, producer on Apprentice, and they said, look, yes, it didn't seem shocking that the one you heard was the most vulgar they ever heard him talk, but no, it's not shocking. They were around him. Yes, he talks about beautiful women, females. His go-to is to say like, hey, look at her, bring her over here, I want to say hi to her, that kind of thing. But they never saw it go to the level that you heard on those audio tapes. They, again, said that that's the worst they've ever heard, and they were around him on the Miss Universe stuff and The Apprentice all the time. And so I think, yes, there's probably tapes like that, but no, I don't think it went that far.
And by the way, and speaking of The Apprentice, so Arnold Schwarzenegger has now announced, Donald Trump's replacement in The Apprentice announced that he is not going to be voting for Donald Trump in the wake of the Access Hollywood audio tapes.
Also a Republican?
Also a Republican, a former governor of California. He didn't say he's voting for Hillary Clinton. He just said he's not voting for Donald Trump. So, yeah, it is an extraordinary reaction
Hey guys, it's Melody Fresh from Detroit. It's Donald Trump. I mean, you can at this point, getting shocked about what he says or what comes out of his mouth, you just got to shake your head. I'm pretty sure that he did say something inappropriate because that's what he does. But at the same time, maybe somebody was holding the tapes, maybe for getting some cash for it, or there was a reason that they may have been hidden, just like they do in the elections.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Hillary has some bullet points that are going to be released closer and closer to November.
By the way, we were told that Donald Trump, I mean, I guess they had a bunch of scenarios on how far Donald Trump would go at the debate last night. And
This was pretty close to the nuclear,
It was
nuclear
close to the
option, right?
button.
I mean,
we were told one of the things on the table was that Trump was going to talk about his golf games with Bill Clinton. In case you didn't know, they actually were kind of golf buddies, and they golfed in Westchester, New York, or near Westchester, New York, in a town called Briarcliff Manor, at one of Trump's golf courses. It's called the Trump National Golf Course, Westchester. And we were told that one of the things Trump would bring up is he did trash talk about women
right.
with Bill Clinton. That didn't come up.
He didn't go. Well, he didn't do that, but I mean, arguably what he did was also just as damaging, or an attempt to be.
Well,
damaging.
bringing those women in.
Yeah, bringing the women in who had all accused Bill Clinton of sexual abuse, of rape, and
with Bill Clinton sitting there.
and to have Bill Clinton in the room. And that was a decision that was made right before the debate started. So
they decided not to do this one, but they did that one.
both pretty bad.
If you look at Bill Clinton, far worse, minor words, and his was action. His was what he's done to women. There's never been anybody in the history of politics in this nation that's been so abusive to women. So you can say any way you want to say it, but Bill Clinton was abusive to women. Hillary Clinton attacked those same women.
Hi, this is Jessica from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I mean, you know, Bill Clinton may have said and done some of those things. If you think about it, there was a lot of scandal during his presidency. But what's really important here is, you know, Trump needs to take accountability for his actions. He's the one who's running for president, Hillary as well. I mean, neither of these candidates are really great representation of women's rights and women's equality. And if you really look it up, it's really clear.
Yeah, this is a weird election, man.
I gotta say, I'm just want to say real quick, I'm so surprised. I agree that, look, he had to do what he had to do, but in that case with Bill Clinton, it's like the one thing that with Hillary, look, what Donald Trump is saying is true, that Hillary Clinton at that time shamed those women and put out there that it was a right-wing conspiracy that these women would come out and say. In the end, Bill Clinton owned up to his actions, and I appreciate that. But what Donald Trump should have said is, you forgave him. I'm embarrassed. I was wrong. I'm asking for forgiveness for something I said 10 years ago. Everyone that I talk to about politics says they love Bill Clinton. Everyone forgave him.
I know what you're saying. Like,
so I would say, forgive me,
but
just like you forgave him.
That's what he meant. That's what he meant.
What he was trying to say.
Well, you got to say what you mean.
Right. No, you're right.
Well, I
gotta
would have just
say what
said,
you mean.
Hillary, forgive me for saying that.
Right, because he didn't say it the way Mike said it. It could be interpreted as he's just attacking Hillary when instead of owning up for what he did.